4 violent farm attacks in 2 years on one Free State guest farm in South Africa. That's the claim that went viral. It went global and helped shape how South Africa is viewed and talked about internationally. There is just one problem here. Those attacks never happened.
Spilling the tea, essay, light on the way. Spilling the tea, essay, truth won't fade away.
Welcome to Spilling the TSA. I'm Bianca, your host. Today's video is a really good example of how South Africa gets turned into a talking point, a symbol, and how real communities get ignored and sidelined, and how disinformation thrives when a story becomes more useful and profitable than it is true. So let me be clear up front. This is not about denying crime. This is not about the refugees or the program itself. And it's not about pretending that South Africa is this perfect place. This is about truth, accountability, and what happens when South Africans try to speak and are shut out of their own lived experiences and stories. And yes, I went to the guest farm in the Free State. In fact, if you want a sign, I have an actual physical sign from that guest farm. So let's start in the beginning. What was the origin of the disinformation? And again, it was on YouTube. So in May 2025, American YouTuber Chris Wyatt interviewed a South African refugee, Tia van Straten. In that interview, she claimed that her guest farm in the Free State had been violently attacked 4 times in 2 years.
So that's just insane. And your farm is in the Free State? Is that where you're at?
Yes, in the Free State.
And things have gotten quite bad. 4 attacks, and that's over what time span?
2 years.
2 years. So we've talked about it being nerve-wracking, and also I've talked a lot in my program about the tension rising across South Africa for ethnic minorities, for South Africans in general, but ethnic minorities specifically, and the challenges people are facing here. 2 years. That's recent. So you hadn't suffered a farm attack in the previous 20-some years?
No.
Never happened.
This wasn't framed as fear or uncertainty. It was framed as fact and as proof of escalating violence against white South Africans, particularly in rural areas. Now, obviously, the shock value did the heavy lifting. The video became the most watched upload on Wyatt's monetized channel, over 250,000 views, thousands of comments. That exact line, 4 farm attacks in 2 years, was repeated in more than 10 mainstream and independent media articles, locally and internationally. Timing was very important. So on 7 February 2025, the White House signed an executive order that accused South Africa of discriminating against Afrikaners, and also directed the United States agencies to prioritize Afrikaners for refugee resettlement. Please note, I'm talking about the original executive order. I'm not talking about the follow-up communication. So if we look at the timeline, 7 February 2025, we had the executive order. 10th of May 2025, this interview between Chris Wyatt and Tia van Straten was recorded. 12th of May 2025, first South African refugees arrive in the United States, and Chris Wyatt uploads the video to his channel. By the time this interview went live, stories like Tia van Straten's weren't just seen as a South African experiencing crime, they were actually read as evidence of escalation of violence against Afrikaners, but also justification for the refugee program. 2 days after the video was published, a neighbouring cattle farmer saw it. He lives there. He knows the farm. He knows the community. And he contacted Wyatt directly. Let me be very clear about what he didn't do. He didn't deny crime. He didn't downplay rural insecurity. He didn't attack the refugee program. What he did was challenge the specific claim around the 4 farm attacks in 2 years. He said plainly the 4 farm attacks did not happen. He explained how damaging it was to see a peaceful community portrayed as violent and under constant threat, and he acted in good faith. He even invited Wyatt to come and see the area for himself. He offered free accommodation. Wyatt's responses, according to the WhatsApp messages that I have, was to shift the frame. Instead of engaging on the actual false claim, the conversation moved to rural crime in general. He spoke about his own experience. Now, remember, Wyatt is not a farmer. He is an American YouTuber. He does not live in South Africa. So he told the farmer that he has experience of visiting farms, joining patrols, and speaking to victims. And he also expressed confidence in the United States refugee vetting process, which I must add, there's many questions around because Wyatt has platformed other people that have made false claims. So it does put questions around his confidence around the vetting process. But again, this is not about the program itself. It's about the community that was deliberately ignored. And Wyatt also declined the invitation, citing that he has time constraints. The farm was never visited. The claims were never checked, but also no changes were made to those false claims. In fact, shortly after this particular interaction and after Wyatt had uploaded that video, Wyatt was on an interview on Biz News. Now, during that interview, journalist Chris Stein mentioned that Biz News had received allegations that one refugee's claims may have been exaggerated. What wasn't mentioned by Chris Stein was that the person that made those allegations was the actual farmer, the neighbor farmer, that lived in the community that was actually being discussed. Wyatt's response didn't change. He just indicated that even if there were exaggerations, it shouldn't harm the community.
Why are people so concerned about this? I appreciate where the comment coming, how it affects the community. But if this person is a person prone to exaggeration, which has been implied, then people in that community would know that and they wouldn't take what's being said seriously, black, white, and brown. So I appreciate the concerns, but here's the bottom line. That person is in America and the rest of the people aren't. So
he again deferred back to the US vetting process, saying that it is an effective process. And once again, the core question, did these 4 attacks actually happen, was sidestepped. Then a second farmer tried. Okay, so this is another neighbor of the guest farm. And in June 2025, she wrote to multiple media platforms. She wrote to Biz News, Cliff Central, and Morning Shot. And her concerns mirrored her neighbor's concerns. She objected to how her community, including long-standing residents and workers in the area, were being portrayed as hostile and dangerous. And according to her, none of the outlets responded. No acknowledgement, no follow-up, no clarification requested, which again puts questions around the so-called independent media because they're given information that is around a story they are covering quite often, but they don't seem to be interested in interacting with the actual community members. As a number of you know, I have been addressing the false claims that have been published in international articles around South Africa, specifically false claims made by refugees. I'm going to just mention this. I personally don't care that people have taken this opportunity. Okay. What I do care about is two things. Firstly, the false premise that the program is built on, but there's nothing we can do about that particular thing. The Trump regime will do what the Trump regime does. But the second thing is the fact that a number of refugees have made false claims. They have gone and they've pretended that they were farmers when they weren't farmers. They have pretended that they've experienced farm attacks as farmers, which they didn't need to do. So while addressing this, so in November 2025, I interviewed Tia van Straten's husband, Jan van Straten. Now, Jan van Straten mentioned that Tia van Straten had left him here in South Africa, and that he only knew that she was in the United States when he saw her on TV. However, that is not the issue. For me, the issue was about the 4 farm attacks, because that particular narrative is highly damaging to South Africa, but also to a community. So I asked him directly about the 4 farm attacks, and it was a telephonic interview.
We bought a farm and we were running it together as a guest farm. The part of the farm attacks that you're speaking about, there was no farm attacks. If we go into the description of farm attacks, it becomes political.
Yeah.
Okay. This is not true. There was no farm attacks on my farm, and there was no crime, and there was no farm attacks in the area where this farm is situated.
As you've heard, he disputed them clearly and directly. Now, this is a man that lived on the same farm, that owns the farm that Tia van Straten had made the claims about. Unlike ignoring the farmers, which Wyatt did, he felt he needed to respond to this particular video. And his response wasn't to engage with the claim again. Instead, he questioned Jan's credibility, wasn't sure who I was talking to. He referenced allegations of stalking and suggested the guest farm was not operational. Once again, the actual issue, whether the 4 attacks happened, was avoided. At this point, I had had enough. I am tired of South Africa being used as a political prop. I'm tired of South Africa being flattened into a cautionary tale, especially amongst race grifters and in right-wing circles. And I'm tired of fellow South Africans being portrayed as violent and threatening to white people in South Africa. So I went there. I booked accommodation like any other guest. So from the 27th to the 29th of December 2025, my family and I stayed on the farm. I also took with my dog, Lola, because it's pet friendly. So firstly, despite the claims made by Chris Wyatt, the farm is operational. There were other guests there. And while I was there, I had a face-to-face interview with Jan van Straten. Good afternoon, Jan, and thank you for taking this interview with me. The reason, as I've explained, is first of all, want to make sure that I have you on camera, and I appreciate that you've agreed to actually come on camera. And I want to address a number of claims that have been made since our initial interview that we had a while ago, made about you and made about the operation of the farm. So that is why we're having this discussion right now. I would also like to highlight we're having this discussion on the farm. So the first claim that has been made is that despite you telling me that you didn't know that your wife, Tia van Straten, was leaving the country, the claim is that you did know that Tia had left the country. And that is based on an accusation that you stalked your wife to the hotel and caused a incident at the hotel. Security was involved. Well, can you just clarify on this matter?
This is not true. Went to the hotel. I met up with Tia. I went to reception. I met up with Tia in the room. We had a discussion about the animals and whatever on the farm and the program. I was a while there with her. There was no security involved or anything. I do not know anything about this. I was never at the airport or whatever things. I was at the hotel. We had a discussion. Tia agreed that she will be back the next morning. She have to do one more meeting, she said. And then she walked down with me to the vehicle. We greeted, and I came back to the farm. There was no security involved and nothing. I don't know anything about this. So it's totally untrue. And I only found out when I was back in the farm, when I was notified by a friend. I was under the impression she will be back. She told me the next morning after a meeting.
According to you, there's no.
I do not know about these allegations.
Okay. Now, this is a bit of a confusing story. I've seen this claim made a few times about an incident at the airport. So I need to know, were you at the airport?
Never.
You weren't at the airport.
Never in my life I've been at the airport.
There is something else I needed to clarify with you, Jan. When these claims were made, there was this kind of strange approach to, they don't know who you are. You could be an ex-partner. You could be a partner, but they do not refer to you as a spouse. However, I do, and I thank you for this because I like facts and I like receipts. I actually have Jan van Straten and Tia's marriage certificate in my hand. People can produce a marriage certificate, but it could be an outdated marriage certificate. Have you checked that you are still married?
I definitely did. I made contact with Home Affairs, and my status on the computer still shows married. So she is my wife.
And then, Jan, I think we have addressed the claims. I want to also highlight that while I'm here, I have made contact with other people in the area. I am actually going to speak to a prominent farmer around the allegations made that you have already refuted around the 4 farm attacks in 2 years on this farm. But I am also going to go and speak to others because I like to make sure I have more than just one source. But Jan, do you have anything else to add?
I'm not going to collaborate further on anything of the farm attacks. I've already addressed that. You can verify from the other farmers. Then I just want to add that there's no bad feelings when Tia left. I still respect her very much, and I will always, and I will never downrun her or anything. What she did, and I will not hold it against her. It's her choice. Unfortunately, life must carry on, and the farm must carry on, and this is why I'm here, and things must just proceed, and we'll see what happened in the future.
After the interview, I went and met with the neighbors who had been trying for months to correct the record. Again, I want to highlight, this isn't about denying crime. Crime affects people across South Africa, in cities, towns, and rural areas. Farming communities face real risks. No one I spoke to denied that. This is also not about attacking the refugee program. What this is about is how South Africa's story gets taken out of South African hands. Once a claim like this is amplified at the right political moment, which this was, that's why the timing mattered, it stops being about truth and starts being about usefulness. It becomes content, currency, something to be monetized, cited, and leveraged by individuals and organizations far removed from the consequences of what they're doing. So the louder the story travels, the less the people inside it seem to matter. Claims get repeated until they harden. Allegations start sounding like they're facts. A place gets branded as dangerous. A community becomes shorthand. And the people who actually live there, black and white, workers and farmers, families and neighbors, are reduced to background noise. They weren't trolls. They weren't denying reality. They asked for one thing: to be heard, for the truth to be told about their lived experience. They offered access, context, first-hand accounts, even accommodation, and it didn't matter. Because once a story becomes profitable, politically, emotionally, or financially, the people it harms become expendable. This is how South Africans get written out of their own story. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, while others speak over them, speak for them, and profit from telling a version of their lives they don't recognize. So thank you for listening. If there's one thing to take from this, it's this: slow down, ask who benefits and who's missing from the story, and listen to the people who actually live the story. Thanks for watching Spilling the TSA. If you found this useful, share it with someone who still believes the headline.
Spilling the tea, SA, light on the way. Spilling the tea, SA, truth won't fade away.